So thank you all for joining. Once again, I think we are towards the third last class of the season, and I'm really glad that you all could make it. Last week's class was a blessing, and thank you, Cheryl. And once again, today we have Jeffrey with us to teach us about the New Age movement. Many of you may not be even aware what New Age movement is as a religion, but it is very prominent in our in this generation, especially in this Western world. They don't have any place of worship, or they may not have any clergy or any sacred book as such, to claim the prominence of New Age movement. But it is a very very prominent so-called religion of this time. I had a chance to discuss this with Jeffrey. That one of my massage therapists who I used to go happened to be, is a white man. And while we were talking, and I started exploring, and I realized that I immediately caught that he was part of this New Age movement. And because we come from India and we understand Hinduism, we know where they are coming from and where they are heading to. Uh, I happen to say this way that I pick up Hinduism from the streets of Mumbai. I know what they do, and I thought I had a lot of knowledge. To my surprise, I realized that this person has got very very deep insights, and he's never visited India even for once. So what I'm trying to say is that New Age movement is a very very prominent system that is very active, and not it is not just about a branch of Hinduism, but you will find certain things coming from Japan and from different other. It's a form of mysticism. I know Jeffrey will talk more into that. Um, Somebody put it this way: it's um, a foreign bird with local wings. Okay, it's come from India, from the eastern part of the world, but it is very prominent in the Western, and the Western world is very much mesmerized by the charms that this religion is, posing. So very important that we must learn, and especially our children are very very they are also very fantasized by this religion and this terminology. You will hear people saying aura and so many other terms, and actually they are part of this New Age movement. Okay, something to keep our eyes open. So once again, thank you, Jeffrey, for taking this class, and I will really appreciate if we can make it very interactive, so that we learn more. When we ask questions, when we get response, our insights, we are going to increase, get more insights into this. So with that, I will hand this over to Jeffrey. Thank you, Jeffrey.
All right. Hello everyone. I hope you guys can hear me. Um, yeah, so that's good. So just Uncle, just to give me an idea, how long does this meeting usually go to?
So we run this till 8 p.m.
Okay,
That's
okay.
1 hour,
All right.
and plus
All right.
minus is that's absolutely fine. Yeah.
Okay. So yeah, there is yeah, so I my intention is to try to end it by the time that you guys usually do. So and there is a lot of information that I do want to go through. So I'll do my best to condense the material. Before anything else, I just want to take this time to thank you, Shubhankar, for giving me this opportunity to share this information with you guys. By no means am I an expert on the New Age, but I think I was able to like Shubhankar and I, because we co-teach the older Sunday school youth class. One of the things that we did was go over the different worldviews, and I had the opportunity to talk about New Age and occult with them. And so I'm just really collecting this information from that talk and synthesizing that for you guys. Um, and I know Uncle also said to make this interactive. I'll do my best to go through the material first, and maybe at the end, I'll open it up for Q&A, and then if you guys have any questions, concerns, you can um, well, we can talk about that. All right. And I think one thing I do like about this class, and really like this topic of worldviews and why we should care. I was having a conversation with an individual. Now, he's from a Sikh background, and he was saying how he's read all these, books of, Christian books, the Islamic books, and obviously they have their own text as well, and and he's still maintaining his identity as a Sikh. So, it surprised me, or and then when I was talking to him, like it made me realize that there are individuals outside of our faith who are reading our books, our texts, but yet they're not moved or persuaded in any direction, or to move away from the direction of their worldview to the light of Christ. And why is that? And I think part of it is maybe they're misunderstanding the text that's before them, or we are not presenting um, the gospel or the message of Christ well enough. That could be the reality. I don't know. But I was also thinking, um, if they are able to read like the Bible, and able to read other text, um, and still maintain their identity as whatever they are. I think we as Christians should also, as he was saying that, I was like, I probably have never read a Sikh text before, right? So I have no idea how to present the gospel to him from his understanding. So I think when we study these worldviews, we're not just looking to get head knowledge, but we're our aim and our motive should be to ultimately to understand where they're coming from and to present our gospel message in light of what they understand. Because everybody has a worldview, and I'm sure Uncle's already talked to you guys about this. We all interpret the world in a particular way, in a worldview, and we have to approach, and it is not to water down the gospel, but to contextualize the gospel to their particular framework, if that makes sense. Right? So even as we study New Age, I think that's the goal and the aim of or at least my aim, is to present the New Age, um, or to synthesize it enough for us to get a basic understanding of it. Okay. Again, like I said, I'm no expert in this, and I really New Age is a difficult religion to even become an expert in, right? Because it's not really it's unlike other religious systems, and we're going to take a look at that. So let me start with this. I'd like to share a document with you guys. It's a Google Doc. It's basically the notes that I've taken for the class, as well as the one that I presented to my Sunday school. So I'll just share that with you guys. And please feel free if there's anything on there that you guys are not sure about, you guys are um, needing me to clarify again, please pause, ask questions. Like I'm more than happy to answer questions as we move along. Okay. All right. By the way, is this visible for everybody? Is it on the screen? Excellent. Okay. All right. Okay. So I want to start with a quote, and I got this from an article that I read a while ago, and I'll read it. And there's a lot of technical terms, and I do want to just preface this by saying there will be technical terms in this slide, or in this document. I had given this to, or I had presented this to our class. So along the way, I'll do my best to try to explain some of the technical terms so that it makes sense for us to understand. Okay. All right. So this is how the quote goes, and I'll read it. So it says, "The New Age, okay, or from the New Age perspective, is really the world's various traditions now on public property." Okay. So it's no longer the private preserve of parochial groups or religious elites that they once were. Okay. What does that mean? All right, there's a lot of terms here, and by the way, the article titled itself as "The Co-Modification and Appropriation of Spirituality." Okay, so this is how they define New Age. It's the co-modification and appropriation of spirituality. So what does that all mean? Okay, it means that it is a religion that is commercialized to a broader audience. Okay, it is, and actually, I'm grateful that Uncle actually used a very good analogy, right? And so that analogy fits the description of the New Age. I'd like to throw in another analogy. I want you guys to think of like vegetable like soup. Okay, it's basically a mix of all these different religions. Okay, a little bit from the East, or mostly from the East, a little bit from pagan practices in the West and other parts of the world. Very non-traditional, very like it's very inclusive, right? The intent or the goal of the New Age movement, if there is any, is to kind of unify like different religions and spirituality and to create a space where people can belong. Okay. Specifically, their goal is to bring those who are kind of marginalized by the main institutional religions. Okay. So, meaning if you don't feel like you have a place in Christianity, right? You've been raised a Christian your whole life. You just don't feel like you fit in. You know, the church has hurt you, right? Maybe the New Age is a perfect place for you, right? It is trying to appropriate the religion, so it means it appropriation just simply means, hey, look, this is how it once was, but you can take this practice and make it your own. Okay? So yeah, yoga is a Hindu practice, but hey, look, make it your own, right? Make it fit what you are desiring. All right. So if it's a health practice or benefit that you're looking for, hey, look, yoga is something that could help with that. Yeah, does that make sense? Right. So that's really what the definition is. The article is making this argument. It's a hodgepodge of these different religions that were once privately practiced, but now it's appropriated in a more um, marketable way, if that makes sense. Right. So anybody can belong to this. Right. It doesn't matter if you're a Christian, a Hindu, a Buddhist, a Muslim. Right. You can have all that, and then you can do all these. Right. So it's very inclusive, right, as opposed to exclusive. Okay. I know that is a broad definition, but I think what might be helpful is if we look at it from the perspective of Christianity. We're all, we've been raised in the faith. We know our faith to an extent to make the comparison. And I think it might be helpful if we make a comparison, side by side, if you will, of New Age and Christianity, so that we can see, okay, what is it like? How is it similar in many ways to Christianity, and how is it different? All right. And so what I've gone ahead and done is I've broken down um, these definitions into categories, and we will look at each of these categories and see the side by side comparison of New Age to Christianity. Okay. So I have these several different categories that I want to go through. And then, by the way, I will share this document with you guys, so you can always look through it on your own. And it might be helpful once I share this document for you guys to actually make it your own. As in, like, maybe if this is, I can make it as an editable document. So you guys can take out what you see there and you put in things that you think should be there, right? So that you can, then it is essentially doing your homework, right? Like, so you can better or cater this information to what your needs are, right? And maybe there is someone that you're trying to reach out to, um, someone that you can connect this with, right? So make it your own. Okay, the first category I want to start with is theology, which is really all that means is it's the nature of who God is. Okay, what do these two worldviews understand of who God is? Okay, I'll start with Christianity, and for all of them, I'm going to start with Christianity because it's one that makes sense to us. All right, and these are things that you already know. Okay, so God is our creator, right? God is sovereign. He's omnipotent, omniscient, omnibenevolent. He is the revelator. Okay, and there's a clear point here. He is the creator. Okay, there's a clear distinction between creation and creator. That is very important. Okay, God is creator. He's not created. He always existed. Okay. So if I can add to that, right? He's eternal. I think that's an important point. He's eternal and he's outside of material creation. Okay. And he's also outside of spiritual creation. So meaning he is unique in his identity as God. Okay. That is important. But, as Christians, we also believe in God's triunity, that he's not just like one God in essence. He is one God in essence, but he has three personhoods, right? The Father, the Son, and the Spirit, which is unique among the monotheistic faiths. And again, this is not today's lesson or topic is not on the different monotheistic faiths, but that's an important point. Okay? What about the New Age movement? Uncle already alluded to this. Many New Agers adopt Hindu like framework, Hindu mindsets. So many of them are what we call pantheistic, and I'm sure many of you guys already know what pantheism means, and I'm not sure if there was a class on Hinduism, but even last week, I'm sure, possibly, I think Cheryl might have mentioned the word pantheism, which is this idea that God is in all, or God is all, sorry, God is all, and all is God. Okay, so everything has divinity. So if you look around, pick up an object, right? So suppose I say to you that this pen, right, made up of its atoms and molecules, all contain divinity in it. Okay, and this is true to one who is pantheistic. Okay, so God is all, and all is in God. And you might have seen Hindus react in a very unique way to this because they believe that God is in all, or God is all, sorry. God is all, and all is God. They are very respectful of everything. Okay. And pantheism is true for not just Hinduism and Buddhism, but even other Indian religions like Jainism. Okay. They take that to certain extremes and would not even, they wouldn't eat certain vegetables and fruits because of this idea, this belief. Um, but there's another very important point here. It's not just that they're pantheistic, which is true, but many of them are what we call panentheistic. Okay, notice the word. It's slightly different, but there's an en there. Do you guys see that? Panentheism. Okay, so what's the difference between pantheism and panentheism? This is a very important distinction. Okay, and I'm gonna use an analogy to help us all. So panentheism says that God is penetrating all things, meaning he is in all things. Okay? To give you guys an analogy, I want you to think of the body. Okay? You have a body, and that body is only animated by the soul. Okay? That body comes to life because it has a soul. But the soul does not have a body. The soul is only encapsulated within the body, meaning you need both to fully function as a human being. Okay, does that make sense? So therefore, to a panentheist, the universe is like God's body. Everything in the universe is like God's body. So God is in everything. Though he is not necessarily like, if I use the going back to the example of the pen, though God is not the pen, he is in the pen. His DNA is inside the molecules of this pen. All right. So he penetrates all things. He needs the universe to be there. And the universe needs God. And by the way, I use the word he, but many New Agers don't have any kind of pronoun specific category for God. He or she or they, like they use anything. All right. So God or the divine is what often they would use, the term that they would use. The divine is in everything. Okay, so before I move on, does that distinction make any sense? Is there any questions about what the difference between pantheism and panentheism is? I'll pause just for questions if there's any confusion as to these two terms. Okay, perfect. All right, so
Jeffrey,
oh yeah, go ahead.
no, you started off saying New Age, right?
Yeah.
And pantheism, and they are separate religions in themselves. So this New Age, I know you said has different religions. So what I'm trying to understand is this when you say you're a follower of New Age, right? Like what I've heard of New Age is Oprah. and she was a Christian.
Yeah.
She
Yeah.
was a Christian. So I'm trying to understand when you say New Age, this is all about New Age, right? New Age religion.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, so under this, you are saying you're explaining these two other religions, right?
No, so what I'm saying is that the New Age is it's not like the other religious systems, all right, where it's easy to say, okay, like we have these central dogmas that we follow, right? We have these sacred texts. New Age does not have that. It adopts things from other religion. It's even hard to say which is a New Age religion. It's a large. That's why the term New Age I think is better understood as an umbrella term because within New Age you might have differences. Does that make sense, mommy?
Yeah, that I just wanted to clarify on that, like, because you're saying,
Right.
because
So
I know
so
pantheism itself is a separate religion, right?
yes. So pantheism it's not just a religion. Pantheism is a belief system. All right. So it's a belief on the nature of who God is. So a Hindu can be a pantheist, a Buddhist can be a pantheist, right? Because they believe that God is all and all is God, right? So a Jain might be a pantheist because this is just how they understand who God is. It's just like someone who's monotheistic, let's say, someone who's Muslim, right, is monotheistic. They believe in that there is one God. So is a Christian, so is a Jew, right? They all believe that there is one God and one creator of all things. Okay, so and there's that clear distinction between them. But what makes a Jew different from a Muslim from a Christian? It's the way they understand. As when you get into the nitty gritty, if you will, right? Like they for a Muslim for God to become man is absurd. Does that make sense? So that is what I'm so
Yes.
pantheism is not a religion per se. It's a belief system within a larger religious category.
Right. Okay.
Okay,
Okay.
does that make sense?
Yeah.
So just like we'd say, someone who might be a new age might adhere to pantheism, but many of them are what we call panentheism. They may make this distinction between God and creation, but they say that God has invaded all things, all creation.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Thanks.
In fact, you know what? I'll give you a quote from a famous New Ager, if you will, and not Oprah, but there is. By the way, this particular individual was originally he began his ministry as a priest, as a Catholic priest, but he adopted very New Age or ideas that were not at the core of Christianity. And I want to actually read his quote that will make this a little bit more sense. And I'm just going to quickly open up this tab for you. Okay, so this is by a New Age teacher slash priest. He's addressing himself as a priest and pastor. His name is Richard Rohr. You can look him up. All right. And so Richard Rohr says this: a mature Christian must see. I was going to read this quote later, but this might make sense. A mature Christian sees Christ in everything and everyone else. That is the definition that will never fail you and always demand more of you. Okay, does that make sense? You want to repeat that again? So a mature Christian sees Christ in everything and everyone else. Okay, how is that in contradiction to the Christian belief or the Christian faith? Do you notice what Richard Rohr is saying? Is that anybody and everything in the universe has in them a Christ-like like Christ is invading all things. In other words, they have a divine spark. So you could be a Muslim, you could be a Buddhist, you could be a Hindu, you can be whatever. You can be an atheist, an agnostic, but they maintain this divine identity among all created things. Yes, Shubhankar.
Yes, yeah, very much. I believe it's true. But even I've heard T.D. Jakes, the famous preacher, Christian preacher, T.D. Jakes, is also inclined towards we. Some people interpret it as to be a New Age movement guy.
Oh,
Maybe
is it?
as a
Okay.
Christian,
Okay.
but ended up as a New Age movement.
Wow. Okay. So actually, at the end, I'm going to show you guys something interesting about how this is also invading the church too. I didn't know TD. I knew Jake's had other issues about the triunity of God. He questions that. I didn't know that he adopted some New Age practices. So that is fascinating. Something that's new to me. But let me move on. But any questions before I move on to the next category? I do have a few of these to
Uh,
get through.
yeah, just one question. So,
Yeah. Go on.
pantheism and panentheism. So
Yeah.
there are chances that both like people can like have them combined in a way as well. So like
I think so, but there is a slight difference. I mean, so again, so to reiterate, so pantheism does not the distinction between God and Creator is just there's one. It's
mm,
there is no distinction.
okay,
Okay, whereas panentheism says there is a distinction, but like
distinction. Oh,
it's
okay.
it's like it's so close,
Yeah, it's
right?
like the universe is the new, but the
Yeah,
universe is
correct.
separate. Okay.
So this is good. So when people say, "Oh, the universe," you have the spark of divine in you. Oh, you have the universe in you. That's what they're panentheists.
Okay. All right.
Yeah. Does that make sense? So they would, in that sense, can be considered like that's a new age way of thinking.
Yeah.
Okay. Awesome. All right. So, and very important, because they believe everyone has a divine spark in them, right? That affects everything about their self, like what they think of salvation, of the nature of man. This will really affect a lot of their belief systems. Okay. They don't see God as judge. Because how can God be a judge if we all have a divine spark in us? Okay, God is just a guide. He's a helper, right? But he's not a judge. But in Christianity, we have this belief that one day God will judge, right? God is the one who's going to be the one who has the ultimate say. He will judge the world, right? And so that is something that they oppose, that they do not like. Okay, anthropology, which simply means the nature of man. Okay, what do these two belief systems think about man? Well, I already mentioned this. Man has a divine spark, right? According to the New Agers. Okay. Man, because they have that divine spark, many New Agers believe man has in himself the ability to change reality, right? And they can attain to higher consciousness if you will, right? And by doing so, right, man is not bound by original sin. Okay, man is able to perfect or move on to perfection. Okay, that is something that you will often hear New Agers talk about. Okay, there is a divine spark in all humanity, and you heard the quotation from Richard Rohr. You know, a mature Christian, he says, is one who recognizes this, right? That everybody has Christ in them. Okay, and we cannot exclude people from that, and that's what his whole thing is. We have to recognize that, and we have the power then to bring about that change. Okay, for as Christians, we know, okay, man is made in God's image. Okay, yes, we maintain that there is something about man that is unique among all creation. All right, you can read that in Psalm 8. You can read that in Genesis 3. Sorry, Genesis 1. All right, man is unique. Man is made in God's image. But man is also like creation. He is creation. He's not just like creation, he is creation. Man is distinct from the divine. Okay? Another important point, they don't believe in the original act of disobedience. They don't believe in sin or transgression. But Christians, we believe that man is a rebellious creature. Okay, he's fallen in need of redemption, forgiveness, and restoration. Okay, so does that make sense? I think that's pretty straightforward. But if there's any questions, please pause and ask. Let's move on to ontology, and this is a big term, but all it means is what do they think of reality? Okay, we talked about the divine, we talked about humans, but reality itself, what do they think about reality? Many New Agers are what we call monistic. Okay, monistic, and that's a technical term, but all like monism or like monistic means is that they believe that reality is just one. Okay, it's non-dualistic. Okay? Very similar to Hinduism. It's non-binary, meaning like there's a clear distinction in Christianity among creator and creation. That's kind of blurred in New Age. I already mentioned that. Okay. And not just between creator and creation, but I also want you to think of mind and matter. Okay? There is a clear distinction in the Christian between what is soul and what is body, right? Spirit and body. Like there is that distinction. We maintain that. Okay, body, soul, spirit. We have that. We articulate that. In the New Age, that is blurred. Okay, because everything has a spark of divine, including like inanimate things. Okay, including things outside the physical reality. So spirit, soul, all that has the spark of the divine. It is very difficult to separate these categories into distinct sections, if you will. Does that make sense? Does anyone want any other clarification on that? That's what monism, as opposed to dualism, which maintains clear distinctions. God, creation. Okay, mind, matter. Body, soul. Okay, any thoughts or questions on that? Okay, perfect. Excellent. Okay, so moving on. The next category I have is on sacred text. If you were to talk to a New Ager, do they have any text that they would bring up? And the reality is they would say whatever you like. They take any sacred text. So if you're a proponent of the Bible, they'll say good for you. Okay, if that's helped you attain, as long as the Bible is leading you to believe that there is a divine spark in you, like Richard Rohr said, right? That all of us as mature Christians have to recognize that we all have the Christ in us. Okay, then the Bible is a good text to take. But if the Bible is leading you to believe that you are a sinner in need of salvation, then reject it. Does that make sense? So they would apply that same thing to all sacred texts. Okay, where is it leading you? Is it leading you to believe that in you is something powerful and divine? Then yes, it is a good text to appropriate. Okay, so this is where that idea of appropriation. Okay, you appropriate it to your needs and wants. Okay, if the Bible lets you do that, sure. If the Quran lets you do that, sure. Whereas in Christianity, it is the Bible that is the complete revealed revelation of who God is. All right, and it's written by various different authors in different times, but they all say this one message of this one God who has revealed himself to humanity. Okay? All right, and I think that's pretty straightforward. Soteriology, okay, this is a big word, but all it means is what did they believe about salvation? And I'm sorry, I didn't finish or fill this category here, but as a Christian, we know what salvation is. Okay? We hear it, we read it, we recite it every Sunday. When we take part of the Lord's table, we are reciting what it means to be one who is saved. Right? That it was Jesus who came. Right? Because we are sinners, we needed, and we could not help ourselves. We needed God to come to our rescue. We needed His forgiveness, and not, we needed to be free from condemnation. Right? And so that is the nature of salvation to a Christian. But to a New Ager, salvation is simply this: is to overcome this ignorance of your divine position. You have that divine position, and to overcome that, right, is salvation to the New Ager. Okay, it is to come to this realization that all humanity, there's commonality among all. Okay, there's brotherhood among all. Okay, and we all can attain to this perfection. Okay, and to a New Ager, they follow often gurus, right? Gurus that will, the gurus simply are guides. They will guide you along the way to the salvation. But for a Christian, salvation comes exclusively through God in the person of Jesus Christ. Any questions about salvation? Okay.
Do they
Yes.
have any
Yeah.
morality-based things like this is right, this is wrong,
Yeah.
how we understand? Do they have that?
Yeah, because they believe that they have a divine spark in them. Individuals can base that on what they understand, what is right and what is wrong. So at the end of the day, it's not a sacred text, or it's not revelation. Like, it is what you say is right and wrong.
So it's pretty much subjective. The morality is
Very
based.
much, very much subjective. Absolutely. Yeah. So it is not a objective morality. They don't believe in objective truth. How can they, right? Because everyone has, so they maintain that, you have to, as your own, come to that conclusion. Okay. But it's funny, when you start talking to them, you'll start to realize there are certain things that they would say, okay, of course this is. And then when you question them further, that belief system breaks down.
Okay.
Yeah, that's a good question. Any other questions on that? Okay, excellent. Okay, so let's quickly move on to missiology. Like, what is their mission and objective in life? And for this category, I've broken down into three pieces. Three objective missions for both the Christian worldview and the New Age worldview. First, I'd like to call this the upreach mission. Like, what is the goal of man? Okay, what is the objective of humanity? So in each of these three categories, right, man has an objective. The upreach mission is what is what is man's objective with God? Like, what has God established us to do here on this earth? For a New Ager, right, it's again to recognize there's a divine spark in you. Okay. For a Christian, he was made to worship God. Right? God has made humans, right, made in God's image to worship and to give honor and glory unto God. So everything that the Christian does comes out of that desire to bring honor and glory to God who's sovereign. And right? So we know that. And then the in-reach mission, okay? What is man's relationship to people within the group? Okay, within the group. Like, so if you're part of the New Age system, what is your mission to each other? If you're for a New Ager, right, it's to maintain spiritual practices, but to encourage others to believe, right, that there's divinity within them, right? To maintain or move them along, to guide them along, right? And I mentioned this before. Many New Agers cling on to a guru. And a guru is simply a guide, right? A guide to move them along the path of divinity, right, or self-actualization, right? Versus in the Christian, their in mission is to edify their brothers and sisters, right? This might be through different spiritual practices, okay, but the ultimate goal is to edify one another within the group, okay, and to bless one another. And obviously we know there's many ways that we can do that, through prayer, through partaking of the Lord's table. There's different practices by which they do that, or which we do that, sorry. And of course, outreach. What is the outreach mission of a New Ager? The outreach mission of a New Ager ultimately is to bring everyone to belonging. Okay, everyone has to belong. Everyone has to feel included, right? And this is the dawn of the New Age. Okay, everyone has to belong. Versus a Christian, okay, yes, this message is for all people, so it's inclusive, but it's also exclusive. The means by which we are saved, right, is through Christ, right? It is there's an exclusive element to the gospel message. Okay, all right, does that make sense? So it is the message of salvation. That's really to the Christian. Okay, and so I mentioned some of these already, but Christology, which is simply the nature of Jesus, what do they think of Jesus? Jesus simply to New Ager is just another universal force. Okay, so I talked to you about Richard Rohr. Richard Rohr makes a distinction between Christ and Jesus. So Christ to him, he says, is this universal force that everybody can attain. Okay, that everybody can come to this Christ likeness, as he calls it. Okay, which we also use the word Christ likeness, but it means very different. Okay, not like what he's saying. So Jesus of history attained Christ likeness. So notice Jesus attained Christ likeness. He did not, or he was not already the Christ. He had to do certain things to get there. Okay? And you can already see that there is this idea of works associated with it. It's a works-based, not grace. Okay? For a Christian, Christ is eternal. He maintains his personhood from the beginning. Yes, he was not, obviously in the beginning, right, when all things or before all things were created, he was not called Jesus of Nazareth. Okay? But he is still the Christ, or he's still the Son. He is maintaining his personhood as a member of the triune God. Okay? He still has the full essence of Godhood, yet maintains his distinction between the Father and the Spirit. Does that make sense? So he is eternal. He's before all things. You can read that in Colossians. Right? Secondly, he became, right, he took on humanity, clothing himself in humanity. That is Jesus of Nazareth. So Jesus of Nazareth is the Son of God taking on human flesh. All right? And he did this for the specific reason of saving humanity from their sins and transgressions, right? From the powers of darkness. Okay, you can read that in 1 Timothy 1:16, right? Where Paul says Christ came, right, to save sinners. Okay, you can read that in 1 John. It says, for this reason the Son of God was manifested that he may condemn, right, the devil. Okay, so you can read that in the scriptures himself. There is a clear distinction, right, between who Jesus is. Okay, and so what we say you might hear this technical term being thrown around. Christians have a high Christology. Okay, that means that we maintain that Jesus is not just any human. He's not just a savior. He is the eternal savior, like the one who always was, who took on humanity. New Agers have no concept of that. Okay. In fact, I'm going to read one more quick quote from Richard Rohr, and just to show you guys that this is what they believe. Notice this. He says, Jesus is the amalgam or the combination of matter and spirit, but the Christ is much more immense. The Christ existed from the moment of the Big Bang, representing God's decision to show God's self in visible form. In other words, if I were to summarize what he's saying is, listen, Jesus of Nazareth is a historical figure. Okay, he's made up of both body and spirit. But the Christ, as he calls it, or the Christ-like spirit, and notice he is using, very often when you hear the language of the Christ, they're not using it in a personal way. It is almost like an impersonal force. Like many Jehovah's Witnesses kind of view the Spirit of God like that. They kind of see the Christ like that. It's just this impersonal force of reality, right? That we all must attain to. Okay, so there's that clear division between the Christian who maintains Christ's personhood from the beginning and the New Ager who does not. Okay, any questions? Okay, and I really appreciate. I know there's a lot. I'm throwing a lot of stuff here, but I really appreciate that you guys are maintaining with me. Yes, go ahead.
Question.
Yes.
So I've seen videos of people referring themselves as Christians, but they talk about manifestation and prayer. Like if you really wish something with your heart and pray, God is going to give it to you instead of surrendering to God's will. So is that part of New Age?
I 100% would say so. All right. So, because again, part of the idea of manifestation is it puts the power and authority on you. If you believe and you manifest it in your mind, it will. And I've often heard people like Joyce Meyer say stuff like that.
Yeah. So
Right?
this Christian preachers also, when they preach that if you declare in faith and it's going to happen, are we mixing this New Age thing with Christianity?
I am, as much as I'd like to be reluctant about that, I almost think that is the case. When we start to mix things and it's not all people within. There's a particular movement within Christianity called Word of Faith, where they believe in someone like who's a
Andrew
good famous.
Womack, I think. Andrew Womack?
Womack was one of them, but I was thinking of the what's his name? Kenneth Copeland.
Hmm.
I'm sure you guys have heard of Kenneth Copeland. Multi-billionaire, like he drives like all the latest stuff, has a private jet. All of that he believes was because of his faith, right? And so much so that they say God cannot do anything without your faith. In fact, I've even heard them say that God himself needed faith to create the world,
Yeah.
right? So when you start to look at that and start to look at what New Age like practices and dogmas are saying, you kind of notice similarities,
Yeah.
right? And then that is where whereas Christians, and this is why we ought to study this, right? Because then we can realize that this is also coming into the church,
Right. Right.
right? And so, since JJ, you mentioned that one of the things, like spiritual practices that I talked about was prayer. But when a New Ager talks about prayer, it's not the same way that a Christian talks about prayer. A Christian, as you said, talks about prayer by surrendering to God's will, right? Very clearly, what Jesus states in when the disciples ask him, "Lord, teach us to pray," and he gives them the Lord's Prayer, as we call it.
Mm-hmm.
It opens with, right? Our Father in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Your will be done.
Right.
Okay. It never says my will be done, or if you believe, right?
It's going to happen.
God
Yeah.
will force you, forcing God's hand to do whatever for you.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And so that is for the New Ager though, right? Because they believe there's a divine spark and you can say, you can manifest, you can believe, you can confess.
Like
Right?
we
And
have
you can bring it to
authority. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so this is what's so tricky about the New Age. It's like it's invading all religious systems. And so they maintain it's like you can be a Christian, but you can also have this on the on the side. Yes, Uncle, I know you were going to add something.
Yeah, I just wanted to clarify that I didn't mean that Andrew Womack is a New Age movement. Please don't get me on that lines. I just meant that they have this word of faith.
Yeah.
Yeah, but they are Christians and believers, but
Yes.
believers.
Yeah.
They're not, yeah. Just wanted, I don't want to even.
Yeah, and that's fair. And so yeah, and just so I can also add to that, like even if you were to ask Kenneth Copeland or Andrew Womack or Joyce Meyer, none of them will say they're part of the New Age. In fact, they may even openly rebuke them, right? But I think they openly rebuke them when they're not part of the Christian movement, right? So if you're a New Ager and you belong to Islam, then okay, because so they're not really questioning the practices of the New Ager. And not really looking at their own practice and seeing there seems to be a commonality. And I don't know, again, I don't know Andrew Womack too much, so I'm not going to even go into Womack, but particularly guys like Kenneth Copeland, which again, I'm not going to even say that he is a New Age or anything like that, but I'm saying there's similarities between their practices that are alarming, I should say. Okay, I'm
Yeah.
also noticing the time. Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry, Jeffrey, all of this, what is being said here, the very title New Age, when did it all originate? Like this is it something new or is it something, and you said
Okay.
it came from the East,
Yes.
more
Yes.
so on the East. So
Yeah.
can you just give us an idea on
Absolutely.
what
That's
time
actually
this movement
my next
started?
thing.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and so that was no, that's absolutely right. So, in talking about all of this, where does this term originate from? I know I'm mindful of the time. Is it okay if we till 8:10? Do we have till 8:10, or is it just sharp 8? If it's sharp 8, then I won't. I'll condense the material as much as I can. Okay, so really quickly, I know there's a lot here, so you guys can on your own time go through the document. But to address Mummy's point here, where does this term New Age come from is an important thing to talk about. I think if we understand the history of it, then I think we can have a better understanding of it. And I want to start here. And so really quickly, I'm going to try my best to give you a very synthesized, condensed version of the history of the New Age as best as I can. Really, guys, ultimately, as a Christian, we have to, and you've already kind of, I'm sure all of you guys have already seen something here. New Age is rooted in something that is not good. Okay, there's a spiritual origination of this movement. Okay, as all other worldviews do. Okay, don't get me wrong. All other worldviews have, but you can clearly see this. I think the scriptures predict, and not just predict, but prophesy, I think, the coming of this religious system. And here's my evidence of that. You know, in Genesis 3, what does the snake tell Eve? The serpent ultimately lied to humans by enticing them with this one statement where he says, if you eat this, you will become like the gods, knowing good and evil. That's the origination of the New Age, really, right? It's this idea that you can be like God, and that man's innate desire to want to be more than what they are, I think, ultimately is the origination of the New Age. Okay, so there's a spiritual origination of the New Age, and you can see this throughout the scriptures. In fact, if you and this is not in the canonical text, but there's a who's heard of the Book of Enoch, by the way? It's not a text in the 66 books we have, but it is what we call deuterocanonical book, meaning it was written at the time between the Old Covenant and the New Covenant, that transition period. And this was circulating throughout the century that Jesus was teaching and preaching. And the Book of Enoch says this, and in fact, it's quoted by the New Testament authors. The Book of Enoch says this, that there were spiritual. You guys remember in Genesis 6 how the angels of God, or the sons of God, came in and like intermingled with the daughters of men. The Book of Enoch goes into the details of these interactions. That it was not just the Bible presents it as Genesis 6 at least presents it as a sexual union, but for the Book of Enoch, it was not just that. It was far more sinister than that. There was that type of like sexual union between these beings, but also when these beings came to the earth, they taught humans different things. Okay, and I know for the sake of time, I'd like to just read one quote from the Book of Enoch. And I'm going to read it from 1 Enoch chapter 7, verse 1. And this is what it says. And they taught them charms, spells, and showed them the cutting of roots and trees. Basically medicine. Okay? Alternative medicine. Okay? Charms, spells, and alternative medicine was taught by these divine beings, these angelic beings, to the humans. Right? They also taught them violence. And this propagated throughout the earth. That's why when we read in Genesis 6, it says there was violence on the face of the earth. According to the Book of Enoch, and to the many Jews that were around the time of Jesus, they believed that these creatures, right, propagated violence on earth. That is why God had to come and destroy them with the flood. Okay, does that make sense? And this pervaded human cultures and human systems so much that, this is the birthplace of things like paganism, Gnosticism, if you guys know what Gnosticism means, and occultism. Simply, a Gnostic or an occultist, right? They believe in the hidden knowledge, that it has to be received by like hidden or divine revelation, right? Knowledge that is revealed and that was hidden but now is revealed only to a certain group of people. Okay, do you notice that how that sounds a lot like what the Watchers and what Satan was kind of doing, right? Like they believe that there's a secret knowledge that we can attain to, right? And the secret knowledge is now revealed to man, and not revealed to all people, but only revealed to a certain group of people who are doing these certain things. Okay, and I believe that this is the origination, the spiritual origination of the New Age. Okay, that paganism, occultism, and Gnosticism maintained themselves from the ancient times, right? It was not just in Babylon and Egypt and Assyria, but it was moved on to Greece and Rome. And eventually it still maintains itself in today's society. Okay? Okay, so really quickly, moving from that, okay? When Jesus comes to and the gospel is spreading, okay? The early church combats the Gnostics. They combat the Gnostics. And you can read this. I actually, in fact, you can see on the side here, I've left quotations for you guys to go back and read on your own, okay, of how the early church actually handled this. Okay. In fact, the letters of First John and Second John were addressed, right, to people who are dealing with the Gnostics. Okay. In fact, the Gnostics were coming along and saying, "Hey, we received this special knowledge from the divine, saying that Jesus is not he's not, he did not come in the flesh. How can he come in the flesh? The flesh is evil according to them. Okay, so how can Jesus take on humanity?" And the Gnostic says, no, though he looked like humanity, right? He was not. And the Apostle John had to address the church and say, no, he denies that the Son came in like in the flesh. He who denies that very statement is actually of the Antichrist. It is resisting the Jesus that you were taught. Does that make sense, guys? So that to them it's rooted in this dark reality. All right. And so the church combated this. And for the longest time, the church was combating different forms and it all just took on different forms. All right. So, as the centuries went on, Gnosticism still maintained, but it took on different forms wherever you are. Like in Persia, they were called the Zoroastrianisms, right? Like in different places they maintained this. And yet the church maintained a apologetic, if you will, against this. Just like we're learning today to do. But as you go through history, when the church began to shift, right, from focusing on the propagation of the gospel, focusing on bringing souls, right, from their way of thinking into the way of Jesus, into the way of Jesus that Jesus and the apostles taught. I think that is when we start to see trouble take place. Okay, so really quickly, we see in the Middle Ages what take place. The church began to focus more on power and dominance. Okay, and when that happened, I think that is when the church lost credibility a little bit. Okay, it began more of its focus was more on domination by power, by physical power, rather than by prayer and by proclaiming the gospel. Okay. And I think as we shift from the Middle Ages, as we shift from centralized power to more of I want to say like the middle of the Middle Ages, okay, we start to see some of that shifting. We know the Reformation took place. Okay, so there was an aim to return back to that centralized religion. Right? Or rather, the focus on the gospel, the focus on what is important. The Reformation's goal was that, but I think even as time progresses, men began to shift away from that kind of thinking. For the sake of time, I just want to fast forward through this.
Jeffrey, we can take this class, continue this class for next week as well.
Yeah, I know next week I was going to do.
Yeah, there is a very important thing that you had, I think you missed it on top of that is a spiritual practice.
Oh, yes.
Which I believe is very, very important. I mean, you can cover it next week.
I am actually, I have on the document, I have spiritual practices mentioned.
Yes, that is something that, we all must understand how it operates. And that's where, our kids, they all face this issue, like playing Charlie in the school and so many other things. So, yeah, we can talk on that probably next week on all of these spiritual practices.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. So, and I think I have a note on that. We can go over that. And next week I was going to cover like cults, and that might actually tie into a lot of stuff we're already talking about anyway. But just to quickly answer, when Mommy was asking, like, where does this idea of the New Age comes from? As we trace history from the Middle Ages to modernity, as people began to realize institutional religion, as they called it, was kind of failing them. So where power was the focus of the institutional religion, and even science was kind of failing them too. Like, we see in the late 20th century, like really the 20th century as a whole, right? What science led to was the World Wars, 1 and 2, the wars in Vietnam, the Cold Wars. Like that's what modernity was leading to. Like the modern world was really leading to more violence. men was like the people were looking for something different, and they didn't want to look for truth in the old ways of thinking, right? They thought they could, there's a spiritual longing in people's hearts, right? And for many, they felt that the church was not offering that hope, science was not offering them hope. Maybe these other practices may. And this is where next week we'll see where a lot of Hindu gurus started coming. You guys know about the hippie movement, and the hippie movement really embraced, right, Eastern mysticism at that time because they were so disillusioned by the realities of their day that they needed something. They needed an anchoring point, and I think for many of them they saw this as the dawn of a new age, and that was their um, I guess their way into this religious system, if that makes sense. I know that was a very condensed version, but I believe this is really the origination of like one. There's a spiritual origination leading to a disillusion by by really the church shifting away from preaching the gospel to wanting more power. And I think when those two things took place, when the church failed to do what it was supposed to do, and when Satan took an opportunity of that, is the birth of that is, I would say, the New Age. Does that answer your question on where that term, the New Age, comes from?
It does. And like, yeah, that was surely what I was asking. I wondered where it all, because look at every religion, it has some leader, and then people are
Yeah,
following that. But in the
yeah.
New Age, there are no text. There's no
No.
text. And also, when you're saying about like different religions, I wonder, do you or Shibu or anybody know, does Muslims actually are there Muslims as part of the New Age belief?
I can start with that, and maybe Uncle can add on to that. Um, Anyone in any religious system can maintain their religion, and so they can be called Muslim and yet embrace New Age practices. And I think there are many hidden, it's not prominent, right? But there are individuals who embrace yoga and embrace meditation and transcendental, like guided meditation, and yet still maintain their faith in Muhammad as prophet. So, Uncle, I don't know if you want to add to that.
So I'll put it this way: all of these religions, like Islam, Buddhism, Hinduism, they are like look at it as vertical lines, and New Age movement is a horizontal line that cuts through them. In the sense, see, the Muslim may not know that they are practicing New Age movement, but the demonic force that is there, they have a demonic force that is operating. Like they have occult, they have fortune telling in some form or the other within their system. So that again, I would say, is like a New Age movement.
Yeah.
No, yeah, no, I just wondered because it's very more difficult. Hinduism, they're open to everything. There are millions of gods, so what? But
Yeah.
for the Muslims, they're more rigid in in all what they say and do, right? So that's
Yeah.
why
So
I
it'd be harder
wondered
for them to.
yeah, so
Yeah.
it's harder for them to acknowledge, and I even wondered, is there at all any Muslim who's part of this movement?
And actually, if I can, sorry, Uncle, I know you were
Yeah.
about to say something, but
So
as
the one that we're going to cover next week, that is the spiritual practices. You will see a lot of spiritual practices that we call out in in Jeffrey's text. Muslims do practice without knowing that they are New Age movements.
yeah, so within Islam, you have different different systems, right? So you have Sunni Muslims and Shia Muslims. So many of them probably won't, right? Because they're strongly adhering to that. And so our experience is often with them, right? With these hardcore, like follow the book to the T Muslims. But there are a lot of Islamic like sects, right, that are more mystical, right? That embrace more mysticism, right? Like for example, Sufis, right? I believe the Sufis are one of them, right? So they and I don't know like the details of Sufism, but Sufism kind of embraces right? Like the mystical elements of their faith,
Yes.
right? And so,
They have
yes, yes,
exorcism.
go ahead.
They have exorcism. They have like how they practice in Hinduism, where
Yeah,
they pray over a stuff and they bind it on your hands, like trying to ward off
right,
evil or bring you good luck.
right,
So those kind of things are there in Sufism, and they
right.
sing, dance. I don't know, some sort of stuff.
Sure. Yeah, no, as Justin said, yeah, that's right. So like when you have practices that are similar in the New Age, it becomes easy for them to be like, or when the line between these practices are blurred, right? Then you have these gray zones where they can be like, yeah, okay, all right, if I'm doing this already, maybe yoga is okay. So you might see people within, these certain sects of Islam embracing these more, all right? Also, you can have one who is maybe disillusioned by the Islamic faith. And to a really important point, why do many Christians actually leave, right, this and embrace New Age? New Age, it kind of offers a sort of like this gray zone where they're not completely denying the faith, right? But they deny certain aspects of the faith, so they still maintain some level of their understanding of what, so it's not a complete dismantling of their faith. I think humans, we don't know what to do when our worldview entirely crashes. But if it's a slow like erosion, right, then it becomes easier to embrace. Does that analogy make sense? Like rather than just being a complete destruction or quick destruction, it's more of a slow erosion, and that's why many people kind of jump ships into New Age because it offers them this sort of middle ground where they can say, okay, I deny these aspects of my faith of Christianity. I don't accept that God is judge. I don't accept that God is um, going to judge the world. There's no such thing as sin. But I think God is love, right? And and God is in everything, right? So does that make sense? So that's how they may be quickly, easily deceived to embrace New Age.
The danger point that I see is the weak link is healing. When people want healing for their sickness, that is when they, quickly get entangled into this mysticism,
Mm,
or when they want to, know the future, and they want some success in their life, and without realizing, they get involved into these practices, and
yeah,
we'll talk about it.
sure.
Like, when you listen to this, even like you quoted Christian, like, top Christian leaders, like, you mentioned some names. I don't see, even you guys, both of you said that they are, showing New Age. They may not be openly, like you mentioned Kenneth Copeland, right? He is not openly confessing he's a New Ager at all, right?
No,
And
no,
but what Nino said, like when through what they are proclaiming or preaching, we
yeah,
see the elements of the New Age. So I guess,
absolutely,
uh,
absolutely.
yeah, that's where. No, I was just wondered because of the name New. I wondered if it had something like a more like very recent kind of a more than way back. You said the early
Yeah,
churches
yeah,
confronted this, so yeah,
yeah.
kind of answered my question.
No, good. So I think the term New Age is, yeah, obviously that is something where like modern people are giving that term, but
Mhm.
I think its roots are more ancient. Um,
Right.
yeah, so like Gnosticism and occultism. Yeah, and again, like next class, I just want to show you guys quickly, just not right now, but in the next class, I do want to just start off just by showing you guys the history of this. So, and I'll touch on practices as well. That might make sense, right? When we talk to a new ager, like um, it gives us an idea of how we can connect with them, and ultimately our goal is to obviously share the gospel with them. But also, I think another ultimate goal, right? I think there's two, is to not be deceived, right? And I think that is the danger of this particular religion, or I don't even want to call it religion, but maybe religions, right, with an S, is that it's easy to get deceived. And Uncle said something like, kids are now using the term aura a lot, but if we know what the word aura is one of the spiritual practices of the New Age. I didn't mention aura here, but aura would be one of those things, right? one of the spiritual practice that they that is in the New Age that now kids are just using without realizing what the root of the word is. Any other questions?
Hi, just one more question.
Yeah,
I could be confused here, but I just want to ask you.
of course.
When you mentioned that this New Age people believe that God is all and all is in
Yeah,
God,
yeah. I'll go back to that. Yeah,
like who do they refer to as God? And do they recognize all like Jesus and Allah and all the
yeah,
gods of Hinduism? They
yeah.
all are like gods. Do they say that?
Okay.
Because I have a friend whom
No, yeah, go on. Sorry. Yeah,
when we like when I have talked to her about Jesus, she told me that at the end of the day, we all worship the same God, and Jesus is
yeah,
same as their gods. She's a Hindu.
yeah. Okay.
So, do New Age people have a belief like that?
Yeah. For sure. Um, I know it's not always easy to make a distinction between pantheism and panentheism.
Mm-hmm.
So um, sometimes it seems like it's overlapping. And I suppose if you were to talk to, if you take like 100 New Agers and ask them, like, are you pantheist or panentheistic? They themselves might even get this distinction blurred. But a panentheist might maintain that there is a distinction between God and now you asked like which God is it? Like is it Allah? Is it Jesus? Is it the God of the Bible, like Yahweh?
Mm-hmm.
To them, there's no point in debating on what the name or the title of who God is,
Mm-hmm.
right? So that's why they won't even use categories like pronouns for God. Like we say God, we often use a masculine pronoun for God, like we say he, right? And not because we say God is male like a human male,
Mm-hmm.
but we maintain that this is how God revealed Himself, one, and then two, like it is so that we can communicate, right? Like who God is in human ways, in human terms. Um, so for a New Ager, they don't um, they don't want to debate like who. They don't really want to get into the nitty gritty of who God is.
Okay.
Okay, it's for them. Some of them is just an impersonal force, right? Like you know how Hindus have the concept of the Brahma, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
he invades, or so he is all, right? But the Brahma is in from my understanding, it's not. It's an impersonal force, right? There's no personality to the Brahma, right? So someone who is panentheist might say, okay, it might be an impersonal force, it might be a personal force. You can put whatever you want. So if if they're gonna talk to a Christian, they say, okay, Yahweh, sure, Yahweh is in all and he right invades all things. All right. To a Muslim, they might say, okay, Allah is in all and and,
Mm-hmm.
and part of it, I think, is just their ignorance. They don't they don't really know what they're saying. It's just repeating what they were told to say.
Okay.
That makes sense. So
Yeah,
that you can substitute for them. You can substitute whatever God you want. It could be a god. It can be a goddess. It doesn't matter.
got it.
Yeah,
Thank you.
of course.
All right. Yeah.
Any other
Thank you,
questions?
Jeffrey, for your time. Sorry.
Okay, no problem. Yeah.
Did anybody say?
Thank you guys for.
So we'll continue this class next week as well, and we'll go deeper into this topic, and
Sure.
yeah, we will look into some of the practices that is very common, that we must be aware, and we don't want to give a foothold to devil in our life, in our children's life. They should not bring anything home from what is available. All of this, the festival that we have celebrate here, what is that thing called?
Halloween?
Halloween, yes. Some of the things that comes from the Halloween, then the kind of products that have been sold, especially some of the brands, some of the product and the brand that is very commonly available in the market today, all drive through this thing. They call it global unity. And yeah, we'll talk more into that. I think this is something that we need to be, because it doesn't take the form of any religion. It slowly sneaks in, like the serpent who slowly sneaks into
The garden,
without
yeah.
realizing that. Yeah, it's a
Right.
very danger thing that we need to be well aware of. So once again, thank you, Jeffrey, for this class, and thank you
Thank you.
all
Yeah, thank you
for
everyone
being
for
here.
listening. Yeah.
Thank you.